My name is Sean, and I am an addict and an alcoholic. I want to thank the Inner Fix for allowing me the opportunity to share this message, a message that might save someone's life today. It's called, When Does It Stop? When does the chaos stop? When does the pain stop? Does it have to end in jails, institutions, or death? Do we really have to keep playing Russian roulette with our lives every time we use? How many more friends have to die from an overdose? Not because they wanted to die, but because they got one bag, one pill, one shot too many, or maybe just one that was too strong. When does it stop? How many parents have to cry themselves to sleep watching their child fade away? How many times have they had to find us on the floor, unresponsive, unable to walk, speak, or even breathe right? How many times have they prayed, God, please don't let this be the last time? When does it stop? How many kids have to go without food, school clothes, or Christmas because the money went to our next fixer bottle? How many times have we driven high or drunk, our children in the back seat, innocent, scared, watching us self-destruct? Do we even realize what that does to them? The nights they cry themselves to sleep because they're afraid mommy or daddy won't wake up tomorrow? When does it stop? How many jobs do we have to lose? How many times do we have to lie, cheat, steal, or manipulate just to get through another day in addiction? We think we're only hurting ourselves, but the truth is, we're breaking everyone around us piece by piece. When we're in active addiction, we don't see the wreckage. We blame those who hurt us, but never see the ones who hurt because of us. When does it stop? How many times do we have to wake up dope sick, hungover, empty, or ashamed? How many times do we have to look in the mirror and not recognize the person staring back? How many times do we swear, this is the last time, but that last time never comes? It's a never-ending cycle of pain and regret until we decide to stop running from the truth. But here's the good news. It can stop, and it starts with us. Life will keep happening. There will always be pain, loss, and struggle. But there's also healing, growth, and freedom on the other side of recovery. We must stop being selfish in our addiction and start being selfish in our recovery. If we put even half the energy we use to chase our next high into chasing our healing, we'll find a life worth living. When does it stop? It stops now. With me. With you. With us. Follow, like, and subscribe to The Inner Fix for real talk about recovery, mental health, and addiction. Together, we can stop the obsession and start the progression.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Noah, and I'm an addict. I've shared in a lot of different rooms, some in hospitals and institutions, some in halfway houses, and now here. And what I've learned is that addiction doesn't care where you live, what kind of car you drive, or how well you dress. It reaches into every type of life, because addiction isn't really about the drugs, it's about the pain underneath. For me, it wasn't just about getting high. It was about trying to escape myself, the fear, the anxiety, the constant feeling that I wasn't enough no matter what I had. The drugs were just the symptom. The real disease lived between my ears, in my thinking, my pride, my fear, and that obsession with control. You see, even when things looked okay on the outside, when people thought I was doing fine, I was spiritually empty on the inside. I kept chasing approval, success, and comfort, thinking they'd fill that hole in me, but no matter what I achieved, it was never enough. I thought surrender was weakness. I thought I could think my way out of addiction the same way I handled everything else in life, through willpower, planning, and control. But that's the lie that kept me trapped. My life was filled with a lot of why me moments, traumas, and letdowns. Pain or mental anguish was something I was accustomed to because that was all I saw. My mom let me down. My dad left because he didn't want to be bothered with her, and child abuse ran rampant in my house. For my siblings and me, it was a tough way to grow up. We were so used to seeing drugs and alcohol that we thought it was a usual way of life. We saw fights and arguments on a day-to-day basis, so these things became common. Through the grace of God, because my mother went to the hospital and no one in my biological family wanted us, I was actually saved by foster care. Some of the homes were in good condition while others weren't. It's where the trauma of sexual abuse entered my world. Fortunately, I had some decent folks who took both my older brother and me in. There, I learned the value of love, support, education, and working hard for what you want in life. But then, as I got a bit older, I wanted to know my mother as most foster kids do. We had left her from such a young age, I couldn't remember anything about her, so I ran away to be with her, and that was the beginning of my journey with addiction. You see, when I was in foster care, I lived in a predominantly all-white neighborhood and was one of the 10 black kids in my school. I learned rather quickly and excelled in all my classes. So when I came back with my biological mom, I was the straight-laced kid with no swag or slang, now living in the hood. I didn't fit in, which made me feel lonely, insecure, and inadequate. I would do anything to fit in, including drugs. See, at first I was against kids who got high, then saw my brother smoke pot, and he didn't die. They had said drugs kill. He actually had a good time, so I joined the party to fit in, and then I was off to the races. Because I was born addicted, that first hit made it easy to gravitate to the world of addiction. This continued for years and led to incarceration and years of therapeutic communities and recovery centers. Life had to change. Because my using had gotten so out of control, one of the therapeutic communities that I attended felt that I needed long-term treatment. At first I was scared because when they told me 6 to 11 months, it felt as if it were a jail sentence. But one thing about these TCs and recovery centers is that the doors open for you to leave anytime you want. Also, I felt that if I could do 6 to 11 months clean, I probably could live the rest of my life without using drugs. I completed the program and my life took a turn for the better. I would attend NA meetings, but not many, as I often found myself judging and comparing the people in the rooms. Fortunately, I was able to get involved in church, which kept me clean for years. In that span of time, I went to college, got married, bought a house, started a business, wrote a book, and life got really good. Until it didn't. My ex and I started divorce proceedings, and the church wasn't doing church-like things, or they probably were, but I was oblivious to my surroundings because like an addict, I became obsessed with church. That's when life got lifey, and my ex and I separated. I no longer had a church, and I was alone. I had nothing to stand on to ground me. The tools of Narcotics Anonymous were not non-existent because I had stopped going to meetings. Now I was living by myself, unsure of how to navigate life on its own terms. I went back out for 14 years and continued using. The sad part is that I now have money. Money to make my dealer very rich, but also money to kill myself with the use of drugs and alcohol. Most people don't know that sometimes you don't have to die physically. The most painful way of dying is emotionally and mentally. I was living amongst the social elite, and I could not reveal that I had a problem because these people didn't know the world of addiction. So I kept to myself, isolating, and did what we drug addicts do, use and use and use. Because of my position, I realized I had to control everything, but I could not control my using. I had to put on a role that I was doing well, and mentally and eventually physically, I wasn't doing well at all. Again, something needed to change. That's when I realized I couldn't continue this way. I needed to change my life. I needed to listen and get it right this time because all had failed. The most brutal truth I ever had to face was that I couldn't fix myself. The same mind that got me sick couldn't get me well. I had to stop being the CEO of my own life and finally let a power greater than me take over. That's where recovery began for me, the moment I stopped pretending to have it all together and started telling the truth. It wasn't glamorous. It was humbling, but it was real. For the first time in my life, I wasn't running. I was learning to live life on life's terms, one day at a time. Today, recovery gives me something success never could: peace. I still have responsibilities. I still have bills, people depending on me, all the normal stuff. But I don't have to control everything anymore. I can be honest. I can feel. I can connect. What I love about NA is that it strips away status and brings us all to the same level. One addict helping another, human to human. It reminds me that no matter how different our stories look on the surface, the feelings are the same underneath. Whether you came here from a mansion or a halfway house, recovery offers the same gift. Freedom from the lie that we're alone and the chance to live real. I used to measure my worth by what I owned. Now I measure it by how I show up for others. I didn't get clean to live a smaller life. I got clean to live a real one. Addiction whispered lies in a language I understood. Success, image, control. But recovery taught me the truth in a language my heart could finally hear. Surrender. For me, that's what this program gave. Not perfection, not power, but peace. And for that, I'm deeply grateful. Thank you for letting me share. Follow, like, and subscribe to The Inner Fix for real talk about mental health, addiction, and alcoholism. Addiction doesn't care about your zip code, your title, or how good your kids' schools are. It's a disease that lives in the mind and whispers lies in any language it needs to.
My name is David, and I'm not an addict. I am the father of a son who was. I want to thank the Inner Fix for giving me the platform to share my journey. The journey of a father who loved his son deeply and lost him to addiction. When Michael was younger, he was such a good kid. He was funny, intelligent, and had this bright, contagious energy. He was my buddy, my shadow, my little man. But things began to change when his mother and I separated. At the time, I didn't realize how deeply it had hurt him. Our bond, once unbreakable, started to fade. I was no longer in the home, and for a boy who always looked up to his dad, that distance left a wound I couldn't see. We still saw each other every other weekend, but it wasn't the same. The laughter faded, the hugs grew shorter. He became quiet, withdrawn, like a different person. Then one day, while I was at work, I received a text from his mother. It had a sad face emoji and a video. When I opened it, my heart stopped. It was my son, lying on the floor, high on something. He couldn't stand. He couldn't speak. His eyes were empty. I didn't know it then, but it was fentanyl. My first instinct was anger, but as I left work and pulled my car over, that anger turned to heartbreak. Mikey didn't need an angry father. He needed help. He needed love. I broke down right there in my car. I cried harder than I ever had. I blamed myself for leaving, for not being there, for not seeing the signs. And in that moment, I made a promise. I would get him the help he needed, no matter what. But addiction is powerful. He'd get clean, and then relapse. Each time, a little more of my boy slipped away. On April 21st, 2024, my son Michael passed away. He was 17 years old. A part of me died with him that day. I cursed God. I cursed the dealers who sold him poison. I cursed his mother. And yes, I even cursed Michael for leaving me. I was angry at everyone and everything. I didn't understand how to live with the emptiness he left behind. Then, one night, I had a dream. Mikey came to me, smiling, just like he used to. He said, "I'm sorry, Dad. I didn't know how to tell you how much pain I was in when you left." He said, "Please don't cry anymore, Dad. I'm in a safe place now. I'm happy." And before he faded away, he said something I hadn't heard since he was 10 years old. "I love you, Dad, and I'll always be with you until we meet again." I woke up drenched in sweat and tears, but for the first time, I felt peace. To anyone watching this who's still struggling, please listen. You are not alone. There is help. There is hope. You don't have to use drugs or drink to escape your pain. Reach out to a friend, a parent, a counselor, or someone who cares. Life will challenge you. It will test you, but those challenges aren't meant to destroy you. They're meant to shape you. You are loved. You are needed. And you have no idea how much pain your loss would cause those who love you. My name is David, and although I'm not an addict, I am an advocate for those who are still sick and suffering, an advocate for every parent who's lost a child. Follow The Inner Fix for real talk about mental health, addiction, and recovery. And remember, someone out there loves you and needs you to survive.
Hey everyone, I'm Tommy, and I'm an addict. Before I say anything else, I want to thank The Inner Fix for allowing me this opportunity, not just to share my story, but to share my scars, my strength, and the parts of me I once believed were too broken to ever speak out loud. I'm here for the next addict who is out there sick, suffering, and convinced they are alone. Because the truth is simple. Our stories may be different, but the pain is almost always the same. And if my story reaches even one person who needs to hear it, then every tear, every fall, every relapse, every night I begged for a way out, it all meant something. I knew I was an addict way before I ever picked up my first drug or drink. People think addiction begins with the substance, but for many of us, it begins with the void, the emptiness, the insecurity, the chaos we try to survive. I was one of those kids who did everything to the extreme. If I found something I liked, I wanted to master it. If something scared me, I ran toward it. I wanted to be perfect at everything. I was the kid who tried to be Evel Knievel, who built ramps, jumped bikes, did reckless stunts, got bloody, bruised, hurt, and then got right back up to do it again. And that right there should have told me everything I needed to know. Because when I started using, I treated drugs exactly the same way. Get high, get hurt, feel miserable, swear I'd stop, then go right back out and do it again. To qualify, I'll give you a brief history of my life, or at least as brief as trauma allows you to be. I grew up in Far Rockaway, Queens, to a mother battling mental illness and addiction, and a father deep in his alcoholism. Dysfunction wasn't something that arrived later in my life. It was my first language. It was all I knew. And because of that, my brother and I took our first drink at 4 and 5 years old. Not because we were trying to be grown, not because we were bad kids, but because when you grow up with broken adults, you end up sampling the poison they leave within reach. Our parents had parties where people got drunk, passed out, left cigarette butts, joint clips, and half-drunk glasses of alcohol. And we were curious. We were kids. We were unsupervised. We thought drinking leftover beer was funny. We thought mimicking adults made us brave. We had no idea that those tiny sips were the beginning of something that would take decades to escape. As I mentioned, my mother struggled deeply with mental illness. When my siblings and I were between the ages of 1 and 5, she attempted suicide. She didn't succeed, but the attempt shattered everything. After that, her threats became a weapon she used whenever life didn't go her way. My father eventually couldn't take the volatility anymore and left. So now I'm fatherless. My mother is in a hospital, and the only person willing to take care of us was my aunt, someone who had demons of her own. Point. That's where I was introduced to the world of child abuse. From ages 4 to 7, I lived through more trauma than some people experience in their entire lifetimes. I don't glorify it. I don't dramatize it. I say it because someone out there needs to know you're not crazy, you're not weak, and you didn't deserve it. And if you survived it, there is a strength in you that you still haven't fully realized. When my grandmother found out what was happening, she took us from my aunt and brought us to her own home in Springfield Gardens. We thought things were going to get better. We thought kindness was coming. But sometimes trauma travels through generations, and the people you think will save you end up adding to your story of pain. She locked us in an unfinished, cold basement, filthy mattress on the floor, and left us down there until she decided to feed us. My brother and I were too much for her, so she made the choice to send us to live with our father. We just wanted out of that basement. That's all we cared about. But what we got wasn't safety. It was survival. My father was living in a rented room with his new girlfriend and child. No space, no resources, no emotional bandwidth. Within days, we were dropped off at a children's shelter, Just two boys surrounded by other kids whose parents couldn't or wouldn't care for them. We stayed there about 6 months, maybe close to a year. Trauma has a way of blurring the timeline. Then something miraculous happened. A woman named Dorothea Jackson took us in. She was the first taste of stability we had, and she tried her absolute best with us. Two wild boys with wounds no one could see. But time caught up to her. Age and health made it hard to care for us. Then came another blessing, a Jamaican Costa Rican family who opened their doors and their hearts to us. And for the first time in my childhood, I felt something I didn't even know I was missing. My foster mom treated us like we were hers. She was a registered nurse, and my foster father was a correction officer and an engineer. Their home was disciplined, loving, structured. We went to church. We studied. Education was number one. No exceptions. Those 5 years were the best of my childhood. My first experience of true love. My first experience of safety. My first experience of believing that maybe I could become something. My mother was still in a hospital for a long time, in a coma. When I was about 13, she finally came out of it. The agency allowed supervised visits, and soon I began traveling alone to see her. And that's where something shifted in me. A desire that many foster kids understand. It's the need to be with your biological parent, even if it hurts you. Even though my foster parents gave me everything, even though I loved them, even though they cared for me in ways I still cherish to this day, something in me wanted to go back to the woman who had given birth to me. And that decision changed everything. Once I returned to my mother, I realized love doesn't fix dysfunction. Hospitals don't erase trauma. Time doesn't magically heal a broken parent. Point. She was the same. The environment was the same. And I had just walked away from the best version of life I had ever known. That was the beginning of the end for me. Point. The part of the story where survival becomes self-destruction. Once I returned to my biological mother, life shifted fast. You see, people assume that just because a parent survives a tragedy, they come back changed. But sometimes, they come back the same, just more broken. My mother didn't suddenly become nurturing, stable, or able to care for us. She was in a wheelchair. She had a speech impediment. She had no balance. And emotionally, she was still the same woman who had tried to leave this world. There was no structure, no discipline, no emotional safety. And I had walked away from a home where I had all three. My brother was in and out of jail, the streets were chaotic, and slowly I became part of an environment I had never been prepared for. I had once hated anyone who got high. Hated it. My foster parents had raised me around decency, church, education, and morals. I went to school in a predominantly white neighborhood. I spoke differently. I thought differently. I carried myself differently. So when I ended up back in Queens, nothing about me fit. I didn't have the hood voice. I didn't have the swag. I didn't wear my pants hanging off my behind. I didn't rock fat laces in my sneakers. I didn't talk tough. I was smart, polite, well-mannered, and in that neighborhood, that made me stick out like a sore thumb. I wanted to belong. I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to feel like I belonged somewhere, to someone somehow. And that was my mistake. Because when you're desperate to belong, you will betray yourself just to feel included. Getting high became my way in. Smoking weed, drinking, doing what everyone else was doing. Trying to blend into a world that was built on pain and pretending. What's crazy is that I thought I was maturing, like I was finally being accepted. I felt like I had come of age. But the truth is, I was simply becoming addicted. Getting high came easy. It was in my blood. It ran through generations before me, and once it got inside me, it grabbed on with both hands. We got high every day. And when we didn't have money, I did what too many kids from broken homes end up doing. I stole. Not only to get high, but also to help my family because we were broke beyond broke. I thought I was helping. I thought I was contributing. But the reality was simple. I was feeding an addiction, and dragging myself deeper into the streets. When I robbed people, I'd take some of the money to buy food or things the house needed. But the majority? That went straight to weed, cocaine, mescaline tabs, alcohol, and whatever else could numb me. That became my normal. Chaos became my normal. Dysfunction became my normal. Addiction became my normal. Then one day, one very specific day, I realized that nothing I was doing was taking me anywhere good. The good memories of my foster parents came back to me. Discipline, structure, decency. I remembered what it felt like to be cared for, to be encouraged, to be loved. I knew I needed to change, and ironically, getting arrested added fuel to that realization. I knew the life I was living wasn't sustainable. For all the shit I had done, I really should have been in jail. But God, grace, or luck, whatever you want to call it, kept me free long enough to think. So I made a decision. I was going to get a job. I was going to support myself the right way. I was going to stop stealing. And you know what? At first I did. Not perfectly. Not consistently. But enough. I got a job. Made a little money. Helped out around the house. Maintained my drug habit without having to rob anybody. But like that old cocaine commercial said, I work hard so I can make money so I can buy more drugs. That was me. That was my life. The cycle never broke. The addiction never stopped. I'd get paid, disappear until the money was gone. I'd get clean for a minute, then crash. I'd try to control it, then lose control again. Eventually, my employer caught on. The excuses, the disappearing acts, the instability. They gave me an ultimatum: get treatment or get fired. So I went to treatment for the first time, 28 days. And here's the honest truth. I heard everything they said, but I didn't listen to shit. Point. I walked out of that program thinking I had the world figured out. I thought I was different, special, smarter than the disease. I didn't take the program seriously. I didn't pick up any tools. I didn't believe I had to change fully, just enough to keep people off my back. 30 or 40 days later, I relapsed. Point. Not a slow slide, not an accidental slip. A full-blown dive straight back into addiction. I slowed down a little, stopped some drugs, continued others. But addiction has one job: escalate. And that's exactly what it did. Then came the second job ultimatum: get help or you're gone. So I went back to treatment. This time they told me I'd need 6 to 11 months. 6 to 11 months? I thought that was a jail sentence. A lifetime. But then I thought, if I could stay clean that long, maybe I could stay clean forever. I completed the program. Life began to get better. I went to meetings, but I didn't participate. I judged. I compared. I convinced myself NA wasn't for me. Yet somehow, some way, I found church, and church saved me for a while. I got married, went back to school, started a business, wrote a book. Life was rising, finally, until it wasn't, because life doesn't stop lifing. My marriage collapsed. My church betrayed its own values. I found myself alone again, alone with myself, and that was the scariest place in the world. What do addicts do when pain shows up? We run back to the only pain reliever we know. And I did. But this time I had money. This time I had resources. This time I could buy my own death sentence. And I used that ability. For almost 14 years. For almost 14 years I ran. I ran from my pain. I ran from my fears. I ran from myself. I thought I could outrun the consequences. I thought I could outrun the emptiness. I thought I could outrun the addiction itself. But you can't outrun what's inside of you. And eventually, it catches up. By the time I was 55, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't the CEO of my life. I was the prisoner of my own choices. I had wealth. I had success on paper. I had accolades. I had the respect of others. But I had lost the most important thing: control over my own life. I had 3D stacked against me: despair, desperation, and depression. I had it all, and yet nothing at all. I spent days isolated, alone in a mansion that should have felt like paradise, but it felt like a prison. I cried more than I ever thought possible. I felt unworthy of the life I had. I was spiritually bankrupt, and I knew that if I didn't stop, death would find me within a few short years. I had to face a harsh truth. I needed help. But not the kind I had been doing before, not the kind I had ignored for decades. I had to do things differently. I had to stop pretending. I had to stop judging. I had to take the cotton out of my ears and stick it in my mouth. I had to listen, really listen. I had to embrace NA. I had to stop comparing myself to others. I had to stop thinking I was different, smarter, stronger. And most of all, I had to want to live. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was beaten. I was defeated. I had failed at everything I tried on my own. And that's when I made a choice. I was going to give recovery another try. This time, I wasn't going to do it halfway. I wasn't going to do it my way. I was going to do it the way the program said. I was going to use the tools. I was going to meet with a therapist. I was going to commit fully, because deep down I knew I couldn't do it alone. And that choice, that single decision, was the beginning of everything changing. I started using every tool I had been given in NA. I went to meetings. I shared honestly. I admitted my powerlessness over drugs and alcohol. I began taking direction from those who had walked the path before me. At first, it was uncomfortable. I didn't want to be told what to do. I didn't want to admit that I couldn't control my life. I didn't want to face the reality of all the pain I had caused, to my family, to myself, to everyone I loved. But slowly, day by day, the change began. I found guidance. I found structure. I found hope. I discovered that I didn't have to fight addiction alone. I discovered that love could exist even when I didn't believe I deserved it. I discovered that I could be human, flawed, broken, scared, and still be worthy. Through NA, I found a family I never had, people who had nothing to gain by helping me, except the joy of seeing someone survive, someone grow, someone recover. I reconnected with my higher power, even though I had come kicking and screaming, even though I had felt abandoned, betrayed, and broken. I learned that God hadn't left me. He had been preparing me all along. Through every foster home, every loss, every mistake, every moment of despair, I began to see my life differently. I began to value myself differently. I began to understand that recovery wasn't just about not using, it was about building a life worth living. And slowly, just slowly, I started living. I started giving back. I started helping others. I started embracing service. I started seeing the gift in my desperation. Because I realized everything I had gone through, every dark moment, every failure, every relapse, was now fuel for my recovery. And it worked. NA saved my life. It didn't just help me stop using, it helped me start living. Now, I do service work. I give back what was freely given to me. I see the gift of life in the eyes of those who are suffering. I help them find the same hope that I found when I was at my lowest. I may not be at the sponsorship stage yet, but I know one day I will be. Because everything I've learned, everything I've been given, is now mine to share. I've learned that recovery isn't a moment. It's a lifetime commitment. It's a series of choices, every day, to live life on life's terms, and to never go back to the place that almost killed me. Recovery didn't happen overnight. It wasn't instant. It wasn't easy. But for the first time in my life, I felt alive in a way I had never known. I showed up to meetings, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I listened, I shared, I cried, I laughed, I felt. I started applying the principles of Narcotics Anonymous to every area of my life. Point. I learned to take responsibility for my actions. I learned to make amends where I had caused harm. I learned to set boundaries, to honor myself, to respect others. And slowly, everything started changing. I began to rebuild my relationships. I reconnected with family members I had hurt. I reconnected with myself, my passions, my dreams, my purpose. Through NA, I found a new kind of family. People who understood, people who cared, people who had been where I was, people who didn't judge, people who had been broken too and found a way back. Point. I learned that love is patient. I learned that forgiveness is possible. I learned that hope can be rebuilt, brick by brick, day by day. I reconnected with my higher power, not as the angry, disappointed God I had blamed, but as a guiding presence, steady and patient, helping me navigate a life I once thought I could never have. I began doing service. I started helping others who were still sick and suffering. I saw the light in their eyes when they realized that recovery was real, that freedom was possible, that life could be lived on life's terms. I can't imagine my life without Narcotics Anonymous. It didn't just save me from death. It gave me a life worth living. And now, every day, I choose recovery. I choose love over fear. I choose hope over despair. I choose life over the lies that addiction once told me. I give back because it was freely given to me. I show up because someone once showed up for me. I share my story because I know that somewhere out there, someone is listening, someone is hurting, someone is ready to hear that they are not alone. Point. The gift of desperation brought me here. The depths of my pain led me to Narcotics Anonymous. And through it, I found strength I didn't know I had, hope I thought was lost, and a life I never thought was possible. Point. My name is Tommy. I am an addict. And thanks to NA, I am a recovering addict with a life worth living. Follow the Inner Fix for real talk on mental health, addiction, and recovery. The comeback is always greater than the setback.
Hi, I'm Danica, and I am an addict. I didn't start out dreaming of being an addict. No little girl ever says, "When I grow up, I want to sell my soul for a fucking bag or a bottle." But here I am, telling you what it's like when addiction drags you through hell and leaves you gasping for air. My story starts with trauma. I was sexually abused when I was young. I was beaten, manipulated, and told I wasn't worth shit. I carried that pain for years, buried it deep because nobody wanted to hear it. So I found my escape. First in alcohol, then in drugs. That was my way of numbing the nightmares, shutting off the memories, pretending I was okay. But I wasn't okay. I was fucking broken. Addiction doesn't give a damn about your past or your pain. It just grabs hold and tightens the chain. And mine dragged me places I swore I'd never go. I hit a bottom so dark I didn't recognize myself anymore. I was sleeping with men I didn't love. Half the time I didn't even know their names. I got tossed in and out of cars like I was nothing, just another body to use for a hit. Do you know what it feels like to look in the mirror and not even see a person anymore? Just a hollow shell, doing whatever it takes to survive one more day? I told myself, lies. This is just for now. I'll quit tomorrow. But tomorrow never came, and every relapse felt like proof that I was worthless, that maybe I was never meant to make it. I'd go to treatment, come out, swear I was done, and then, boom, back at it, back in the fucking streets, back in the pain. The truth is, I wasn't being honest. Not with myself. Not with anyone. I wasn't dealing with the shit that drove me to use in the first place. I was treating the symptom, not the wound. When I finally walked into the rooms, I wasn't looking for a miracle. I just wanted the pain to stop. But what I found was people telling me the truth I didn't want to hear. That if I didn't face my mental health, my trauma, my shame, I'd never recover. Addiction was the surface problem, but underneath was all the shit I'd been running from. It wasn't easy. I had to admit my wrongs. I had to own my character defects, all my bullshit. I had to say out loud the things I swore I'd never tell anyone, to fucking people I didn't know. And I had to let go of the shame and the guilt that kept me chained to my past. That meant being honest for the first time in my life. No more bullshit. No more hiding behind drugs or alcohol. Just raw, ugly honesty. And you know what? That honesty set me free. It saved my fucking life. Recovery wasn't smooth. I relapsed more times than I can count. I am not a first time winner. I didn't walk in, get clean, and live happily ever after. I fell, I stumbled, I crawled, over and over. But every single time I got back up, I learned something new. I realized recovery isn't about never falling. It's about not staying the fuck down, not suffering. Today, I'm clean. Not because I'm stronger than anyone else, not because I magically figured it out, but because I finally surrendered. I stopped fighting the truth. I stopped pretending I could do it my way. I admitted that I needed help, not just to put down the drink and the drug, but to face my mental health, my trauma, my scars, one day at a time. I've learned that my past doesn't define me. Yeah, I've been used, abused, and tossed aside, but I'm not that girl anymore. I'm not just an addict. I'm not just a victim. I'm a survivor. And to anyone out there who feels like I used to feel, worthless, broken, beyond repair, listen to me. You're not. You might be down in the dirt, but you can get up. You can crawl your way out. You can recover. But you've got to be fucking honest. You've got to stop running from the pain and face it head on. That's the only way the healing starts. Because I promise you this, if a woman like me, who's been to hell and back, can find recovery, so can you. My name is Danica, and I am and will always be an addict. But it's okay today. Like, subscribe, and follow The Inner Fix for real talk on mental health, addiction, and alcoholism. The road to recovery is ready when you're ready to be sick and tired of being truly sick and tired.
Hi, my name is Michael, and I'm an alcoholic. I want to thank The Inner Fix for allowing me to share my story. Because of this platform, Alcohol Anonymous and my brother, I am here today. I started drinking at 14, around the time my parents separated. I thought their split was because of my brother and me. My father was in the military, so we moved a lot. Being the new kid was hard. I fought often just for being an outsider. Kids are relentless, and when you're the new kid on the block, it's hard to fit in. After my parents split, I lost my anchors. My dad drank a lot, and I wasn't too sure if that was the cause, but I saw that after they broke up, my mom didn't want him to visit. She never knew how I missed him and how much it hurt now that he was gone. I began to fucking rebel. My brother and I would sneak into the attic to party after we stole booze and beer from where my mom and dad would have it stashed. My brother was okay with the beer, for it was light, but the liquor, he didn't like it. For me, it was an escape. I drank before school, during school, after school. It became the only constant in my life. I started hanging with the wrong crowd. Everyone drank and used drugs. My grades slipped, but I didn't care. One afternoon, my father showed up at my school, and it was like the happiest I had been in a while. I hoped things would get better. He said he loved us, then left. After that, I never saw him again. By 17, my drinking got worse. I was stealing beer and liquor. A few times I got busted, but faced no real time. I was this privileged little prick that thought I was above the law. That false sense of immunity kept me going. I added pot and cocaine. My life became a hot mess. I would have had success in football, but drinking held me back. Coaches noticed because I would miss games or showed up drunk. Eventually, I flunked out of school. Jobs were small and temporary, and at that time I realized I pushed my brother away. He too didn't want no parts of my bullshit. My mom threw me out, so I had rented tiny rooms or cheap apartments to have a place to lay my head. Drinking made me unreliable. For periods I lived on the street because I preferred to buy booze than pay rent. I wasn't from poverty, that was not my problem. I was running from pain. I thought alcohol was my friend, but alcohol became my enemy. I bought a little Honda just to get to the liquor store, to work and back. I practically lived in it. One night I wrecked it and nearly killed myself. I woke up in the hospital handcuffed to the bed like you see in the movies. I had no memory of how I fucking even got there. I damaged my back, cracked my ankle, and nearly broke my neck. I also found out that I'd hit and killed a teenage girl on a bike. You'd think that would make me fucking stop. But the guilt and shame only made things worse. I was charged with vehicular manslaughter and sentenced to 1 to 3 years. Fortunately, I got out after 2. The sad thing, prison wasn't a cure. I still got high in there, and when I got out, the cycle continued. After I was released, I found work as a handyman, but fell back into the same pattern. I didn't kill anyone again, but the heavier drinking took over. I stopped caring for myself. My skin turned yellow from jaundice. In July 2023, at 32, I ended up in the hospital with cirrhosis of the liver. Many thought, including myself, I would die. Lying in that hospital bed, I realized something had to change. My younger brother came to visit. He shocked the hell out of me when he told me he loved me and suggested that maybe I needed treatment. Since I left home and was on my own, he'd become an architect and was doing well for himself. He said he'd be willing to pay for everything if I would go. At first, I was too ashamed to accept. Pride and embarrassment held me back. But I thought about the wreck, the jail time, the nights on the street. I realized I had failed at living. I was 32 with nothing to show for it, so I accepted his offer. I went into detox for 6 days. It was fucking brutal. Shakes, sweats, insomnia, nausea. My body felt betrayed by me. But I made it through. From detox, I went to a recovery center for 6 months. During those 6 months, I decided to change. I found a way to connect with a higher power, the one I call God. I learned I could live without alcohol and drugs. They gave me practical suggestions, meetings, and community. A group from AA called H&I, which stands for Hospitals and Institutions, shared their stories. I saw myself in them. Their honesty resonated. They told me to go to a meeting the day I got out, and I did just that. My brother, who had been there for me, set me up with a job and an apartment. I cried out of gratitude and thanked him profusely. He said, "Thank me by staying sober." I looked him in the eye and honestly vowed I would. I started going to AA meetings regularly, and life slowly got better. I began praying and meditating each morning, and now keep my recovery and my last days of using in front of me. I remember that hospital bed, the detox, the feeling of worthlessness. That memory keeps me honest. Today I don't need a drink or a drug. I'm not perfect, but I'm a different man. I do H&I now because I want to give back what was freely given to me. I share my story so someone listening might see themselves in it and know that change is possible. My name is Michael, and I'm an alcoholic. Thank you for letting me share. Follow, like, and subscribe to The Inner Fix for real talk on mental health, addiction, and alcoholism. Don't allow your past to define your future. You are worthy of change.
Welcome back to The Inner Fix. Today I want to share a little bit about asking for help. Seems simple enough, right? One would think so, but through my own experience, it was one of the hardest things I have ever done. I spent many years suffering and torturing myself because I simply could not ask for help. And it's not like I didn't have amazing people in my life who would have moved mountains to help me. On the contrary, I had quite a few solid people willing to help. The problem was I was always okay or fine or just great, and it took a long time to realize I was far from all of those things. Sure, there were times where deep down I knew I was not in a good place, but I could never bring myself to say those 3 simple words: I need help. Thinking back, the only time I ever admitted I needed help was whenever I was standing in front of a judge facing some kind of legal issue or jail sentence. So, why was it so hard for me to admit I was struggling? Well, in the past, it was in my mind, just not what men did. My whole life I was taught to be a man, toughen up, and keep your issues to yourself. I was never allowed to talk about family issues, big or small, outside the family home. And that learned behavior played a huge role in my chronic progression into substance abuse and my rapid decline in my mental, emotional well-being. It's a lonely, depressing feeling, and the worst part is that it was 100% self-inflicted, self-serving, and an absolute direct link to many devastating chronic relapses. I suffered alone for many years because I couldn't or wouldn't ask someone to help me. I denied myself years of true mental, emotional, and spiritual stability because, oh gee, what I thought a man should be. Even at my darkest moments, I had an amazing woman right by my side. My wife never wavered, never turned her back, never betrayed me, never stopped loving me, and never gave up on me, even when I gave up on myself. Yet I could not ask this woman, who to this day is my everything, for help. The amount of agony I put myself, my family, and my wife through was unspeakable. Ultimately, it led me to a 3-year prison sentence after a lengthy stay in a drug treatment facility. I was in such a dark place during my last run that my wife could only describe me as a demonic shell of myself. Eventually, I did recover, and today I am 43 months sober and in a much better place. But none of that would have been possible if I hadn't had some help. We cannot do it successfully if we do it all alone. So, if you're sitting with yourself wrestling with this issue or questioning your manhood, do yourself and your loved one a huge favor. Ask for help. Odds are they already know you're struggling, but like they say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. Don't deny yourself the help you need, and don't deny your loved ones the chance to help you get it. Today, I have learned I'm not alone, and I never have to go through anything alone. I don't have to be that stubborn, tough guy anymore. I have learned that it's okay to cry or be angry as long as I recognize it, and if needed, ask for someone to help me out. I can't tell you how much of a gift it is to be able to ask and receive help. Remember, alone we suffer, together we recover, but it all starts with you. If you are struggling or in need of assistance, there are numerous resources available. Please, just ask. Follow the Inner Fix for real talk about mental health, addiction, and alcoholism, because sometimes asking for help is what can save your life. Thank you.
Hello, I'm an addict, and my name is Kim. This is the Inner Fix, where we talk about real things: addiction, alcoholism, and mental health. I'm an addict, but I'm also a mom. My addiction to drugs made me unfit to be a mother. While I did not deserve to have a child, my child deserved to have a mom, so I did the best I could with the cards I had been dealt. Although I was physically present with my son for many years, I was never truly there for him in the way he needed. The drugs always came first. I would leave my son home alone while I went to score, or I would bring him with me to places a child should never go. It makes me fucking sick to think about the situations I put him in. Most of my time was spent locked in the bathroom getting high while my son fended for himself. My addiction eventually brought me to a dark place that made me want to not live anymore. I was too fucking scared to kill myself, but I also didn't want my son to grow up without a mother. That led me to resent him for being the reason I stayed alive. How fucking sick is that? Most days, I found myself crying on the bathroom floor, asking myself how the fuck I ended up here. Then one day, I woke up with the gift of desperation. I finally became desperate enough to go to rehab, and that was the best decision of my life. But going to rehab also meant leaving my son without a mother. I know that really hurt him, so I promised myself this would be the only time I ever left him like that. It was fucking hard to be away, but I knew I had to help myself first if I was ever going to be any use to him. In rehab, I learned a lot. They gave me the tools I needed to survive without having to pick up again. They told me to go to 90 meetings in 90 days. I didn't keep count, but once I started attending meetings, found a sponsor, and began working the program, something changed. I no longer felt forced to go. I actually wanted to go. I found hope hearing other people's experiences. To this day, I still try to attend a meeting a day, sometimes more. My son sometimes asks, "How much longer do you have to go to meetings?" And the truth is, if I'm lucky, for the rest of my life. Thanks to rehab, the program, my sponsor, and the 12 steps, I can finally be the mom my son always deserved. I'm living proof that if I can do it, anyone can. If you're struggling, please reach out for help. You don't have to live that way, and you never have to use again. Follow the Inner Fix, where we talk about real things: addiction, mental health, and recovery. And always remember, you have to love yourself before you can love another.